The number in your bank account is lying to you. Here's the truth. Friends, today I'm going to talk to you about something very serious. It's so deeply ingrained in our society that no one even questions it. The lie is simple. The number in your bank account is the ultimate indicator of success. If that number's big enough, you've won the game. But you know what? Both economic and personal history tell a completely different story. This story is about this. There were people who had more wealth than entire countries, but in the end they remained powerless, were ruined, or were forgotten. And there are others who never reached huge fortunes, but built something much more solid. What did they build? Value. Real value. The kind that doesn't evaporate when the stock market crashes or the monetary system collapses. If you understand the difference between wealth and value, look at what you'll see. Most people are chasing the wrong metal, and this race almost always ends in loss. Let's drop this mask. Let's go to one of the wealthiest courts in human history. France under King Louis XIV. The golden days of Versailles and collapse. In the early 1700s, the Sun King had turned Versailles into the heart of European luxury. Gold-plated walls, marble halls, carefully prepared gardens. The entire palace was a monument dedicated to visual wealth. Nobles were spending fortunes to maintain their prestige. Silks from China, sugar from the colonies, wine from Bordeaux. From the outside, France looked incredibly wealthy, but this wealth was fragile, friends. The economy largely depended on war plunder, colonial exploitation, and debt. Taxes were disproportionately imposed on peasants, while nobles and clergy paid almost nothing. So while Louis dazzled the continent with magnificence, the financial system beneath was rotting from within. John Law and the Mississippi Bubble. Now let's quickly jump to the early 1700s. John Law, a Scottish financial genius, becomes France's finance minister and tries to solve the problem with paper money and the Mississippi Company. At first it worked amazingly. Fortunes grew incredibly on paper. Nobles and merchants saw their wealth increase beyond their wildest dreams. But this wasn't real value. The Mississippi Company's profits were inflated. Its Louisiana lands were oversold. And when the system collapsed in 1720, bam! That paper wealth vanished almost overnight. Those who chased the fast money illusion went bankrupt, but those who held tangible assets, land, production skills, survived the storm. This was one of the first major examples in modern Europe of the difference between apparent wealth and real value. The same story repeated, again and again. This pattern repeated everywhere, friends. 1920s America, stock market, frenzy. In the 1920s, American investors rode the stock market as if it were a one-way elevator going up. Cars, radios, skyscrapers. These all symbolized unstoppable progress. Bankers and speculators leveraged themselves to dangerous levels, creating fortunes out of thin air. Then came the 1929 crash, and that wealth evaporated. Who were the only survivors, do you know? Those whose assets were still useful. Farms that could produce food. Factories that could manufacture essentials. Businesses that solved ongoing needs. The lesson ignored in France was ignored again in America. Money is a claim on value, not value itself. If the underlying value disappears, money becomes meaningless. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most of what we call wealth today is very fragile, friends. Stocks are priced based on future expectations, not guaranteed production. Real estate values depend on interest rates and market sentiment, not just bricks and cement. Even currencies, the lifeblood of the financial system, are only as strong as people's trust in the institutions that issue them. If that trust is lost, History shows us how quickly wealth can turn to dust. Early 1920s Weimar Germany, 2000s Zimbabwe, 2010s Venezuela. In every case, people who measured their wealth in local currency went broke, but those who held value in hard assets or transferable skills somehow preserved their prosperity. So, wealth is a number, but what is value? Value is this: the capacity to produce, endure, and be useful regardless of the financial environment. Value can be a skill you can trade, a network you can trust, an asset that produces essential goods or services, knowledge that enables you to solve urgent problems. Value holds when markets panic. It holds when currencies collapse. It holds because people need it. And this need is the most resilient currency of all. The Japan bubble, a striking example. One of the clearest examples comes from Japan's economic bubble of the 1980s. Listen to this. At its peak, the land under Tokyo's Imperial Palace was worth more than all the real estate in California. Japanese companies were buying famous buildings from around the world, from the Rockefeller Center in New York to golf courses in Hawaii. On paper, Japan was unstoppable. But when the bubble burst in 1991, trillions of dollars evaporated. Companies went bankrupt. Stock prices crashed. Real estate values plummeted. But the country didn't disappear. Why? Because Japan had something more important: a highly educated workforce, a manufacturing infrastructure that could produce world-class products, a culture of precision and quality. This was value. It didn't prevent pain, but it provided a foundation for recovery. How the system deceives you. This distinction is very important because today's financial system constantly blurs the line between wealth and value, and this confusion is profitable for those in power. What do governments want, do you know? Citizens who measure their success by the numbers on their statements, not by the soundness of their personal economy. What do corporations want? Customers who chase the latest financial products, not those who invest in real, tangible skills or lasting assets. The more you confuse wealth with value, the easier it is to trap you in cycles of dependency. A lesson from ancient Rome. In ancient Rome, the wealthiest senators owned vast estates, but where did their real power come from? From controlling the essential resources the city depended on: grain, olive oil, wine. When Rome's currency, the denarius, was debased over the centuries, those who only hoarded coins saw their purchasing power erode. But those who held value in the form of agricultural output, mining rights, or shipping fleets maintained their influence. This is the same principle we see in those who survived the hyperinflations of the 20th century and the market crashes of the 21st century. Why most people never break free. The reason most people never achieve true financial freedom is this: they chase wealth without creating value. They focus on accumulation, but don't ask the deeper question: what is this wealth actually made of? What's behind it? If your wealth is entirely tied to a stock index, corporate salary, or a currency that can be devalued, you may not be as wealthy as you think. When does real financial freedom come? When your livelihood is not dependent on the constant stability of a system you don't control. In the modern era, this means diversify not just your investments, but the types of value you hold. Types of value: 1. Productive assets, things that can serve a need in any economic environment: land, tools, technology. 2. Always in demand skills: coding, construction, food production, problem solving in high pressure environments. 3. Strong relationships, connections that can provide opportunities or protection when formal systems collapse. All of these are forms of value that last longer than paper wealth. The greatest irony. Here's the most ironic part. The people most obsessed with appearing wealthy are often the most vulnerable. History is full of examples. Late 18th century French aristocrats. They lived in luxury but had no real value to fall back on when the wind turned. Early 20th century American robber barons. Their empires collapsed when regulations changed. Early 2000s tech millionaires. They were rich on stock options until the bubble burst. All of them were wealthy until they weren't, because wealth without value is like a sandcastle. The real challenge and opportunity is here. Here's where the real challenge and real opportunity lies. The distinction between wealth and value isn't just an interesting history lesson. It's the dividing line between those who survive economic storms and those who get swept away by them. The same forces that bankrupted French nobles, destroyed Wall Street in 1929, and deflated Japan's bubble economy are still active today. They're just wearing modern clothes. Understanding this difference gives you what? The power to strip away the illusions and start building something durable. Something that no stock market crash, currency devaluation, or political shift can take from you. Finance's most seductive lie. We need to start by dismantling one of the most seductive lies the financial system sells you. The lie that a high number on your bank statement means you're secure. History is full of people who thought they were wealthy right up until the moment they weren't. The Roman Empire lesson. In Rome, merchants could accumulate fortunes in denarius. But then what happened? Those coins were constantly debased by desperate emperors to finance wars and construction projects. By the 3rd century AD, a denarius that was once almost entirely silver contained almost no silver at all. Prices soared, trust collapsed. Merchants realized too late. Their wealth was an illusion because the value had been stolen from under them. The metal was the same. The emperor's image was the same, but the purchasing power was gone. First lesson. Wealth measured in a currency controlled by someone else can disappear without warning. Weimar Germany, a more extreme example. Let's jump to the Weimar Republic in the early 1920s. You'll see the same principle in even more extreme form. A worker would be paid at noon. He'd try to buy bread on the way home. The price had doubled. Savings accumulated over decades were reduced to the value of a bus ticket. People were hauling money in wheelbarrows. Because they were rich? No. The paper was more worthless than the kindling they'd use to start a fire. Who had the real wealth in that period? Those with assets outside the collapsing mark. Land, foreign currency, gold, goods in high demand. The lesson is brutal but consistent. If the underlying value is rotting, the number of zeros in your paycheck is meaningless. The great misconception of modern investors. Modern investors like to say this is ancient history. But the echoes today are deafening. Let's look at Japan's asset bubble in the late 1980s. At its peak, the land under Tokyo's Imperial Palace was worth more than all the real estate in California combined. Stocks were trading at dizzying price to earnings ratios. Fortunes were ballooning overnight. Then the bubble burst. By the early 2000s, Japanese stocks had lost over 70% of their value. Real estate prices had been crushed for more than a decade. What did those who measured their wealth purely in the market's inflated prices discover? That they had built castles on sand. But those who had diversified into assets with enduring demand weathered the storm. Critical insight. Value is rooted in utility, scarcity, and resilience, not in speculative euphoria. So, what does this mean for you? What it means for you right now is this. The house you own, the stocks you hold, even the currency you earn, all exist within a system that can inflate, devalue, or reprice them overnight. Financial education isn't about memorizing terms from economics books. It's about understanding the hidden levers of the financial system. How can central banks, governments, and major institutions shape, manipulate, or distort the prices of everything you own? When you grasp this, you start asking the only question that matters: what will still hold value if the system changes? This mindset shift alone puts you ahead of most people, because they've been trained to think in numbers, not in realities. The clearest examples from history: who survived the Great Depression? Just those with piles of cash? And no. The survivors were those with skills, those with productive land, those with assets that generated ongoing real value. In times of crisis, being able to produce something others need is much more powerful than holding a portfolio of abstract promises. Why did farmers, craftsmen, and business owners emerge stronger after a crash in economic history? Because they could adapt their output to the needs of the moment. Real wealth is self-reinforcing. It generates value without being entirely dependent on the market's mood, the modern system's trap. But here comes the trap, friends. The modern financial system conditions you to focus on appearances. High salary. You must be wealthy big house. You must be secure rising stock portfolio. You must be set for life. These signals are comforting and dangerously misleading. Because as soon as inflation bites, interest rates spike, or a liquidity crisis hits, those same assets can become anchors and drag you down. The 2008 financial crisis, ruthless truth. The 2008 financial disaster exposed this ruthlessly. What did millions of homeowners discover? That their wealth was nothing more than overvalued property backed by debt they couldn't repay. Banks foreclosed, values crashed. The dream of security evaporated. So, where does this leave us? We face both a personal and systemic challenge. Personally, are you going to chase the illusion of wealth or build a foundation of value? You must decide. Systemically, you must understand that the financial system is not designed for your freedom. It's designed for its own survival, often at your expense. That's why the path to financial freedom starts by stepping outside the mindset the system has trained into you. The goal isn't to beat the game on its terms. The goal is to redefine the game. A game where your wealth is measured in value that can't be erased by bad policy, a stock market crash, or an interest rate change. From historical insight to personal strategy. Here's where historical insight turns into personal strategy. Look at what has consistently preserved value across centuries: productive land, essential commodities, skills that can't be automated, ownership of enterprises that meet enduring human needs, stores of value outside the reach of political manipulation. Whether it's gold in the ancient world, oil in the 20th century, or intellectual property in the digital age, the pattern is the same. Those who own what others must have are much harder to dispossess than those who simply hold currency or speculative paper. The real definition of financial freedom. Here is the real definition of financial freedom. The ability to maintain and grow your wealth regardless of how the financial system reshuffles the rules. Final word. If you take one thing from this. If you take one thing from this, let it be this. Wealth is not what you're told it is. The financial system thrives when you chase numbers because numbers can be manipulated. Value is harder to fake. Value resists collapse. And value, unlike speculative wealth, will still be there when the illusions fade. Learn to tell the difference, and you'll see through and one of the oldest and most dangerous tricks in economic history. Because history doesn't repeat exactly. But if you don't understand it, it will crush you all the same. If this gave you a new perspective, subscribe. History has the answers. I'll show you where they are.